My name is Keith Cotterman. I'm a Senior Systems Engineer with Hive Networks. In this video, I'm going to show you how to block MAC addresses. So the scenario is you've got a client device that you don't want to gain access to your wireless network, and you need to block it by the MAC address. There's a couple different ways that we can do this, so we'll cover both of those. Basically, though, we're going to take advantage of our IP-based firewall. Our MAC-based firewall in the user profile, and in one scenario, and then the other scenario, we're going to take advantage of using two separate user profiles, and then use our assignment rules to map a MAC address to a particular user profile. And inside that user profile, we're just going to put the user onto a VLAN that doesn't exist in your network, essentially black holing them. So for this video, we'll use an existing network policy here, a lab network policy, and an existing SSID being lab tests. For this one, we're just going to use a open SSID with a captive web portal here using a basic terms of service page. This will work with any authentication type that you have here. Now, how do you decide whether you're going to use a single user profile or two user profiles? And really, the answer to that is just what are you already doing? So if you're doing something like enterprise authentication with Active Directory, and you have multiple user profiles and you're mapping users to different user profiles based on AD credentials. That could be teachers compared to students or employees compared to an IT person or an executive member of the team. However you're doing that, if you already have multiple user profiles in place by checking this box here, then you'll want to probably use the two user profile method. In this case, though, everyone that connects to this particular guest network is being put into one user profile. So then we're going to take advantage of the MAC-based firewall policy in the user profile to accomplish that first. Again, I'll show you both. Let's just get started and walk through this. So we're going to edit the user profile. And notice that we already have an IP firewall policy in place. This is for outbound traffic. Ultimately, everything is going to be permitted. And if we look at the rules here, we're just allowing a user to get an IP address, resolve DNS, and then we have these three rules denying access to all internal subnets with an any out policy. We're going to leave that in place and toggle over to the MAC firewall side. Here, what we're going to ultimately do is write a firewall rule. The source MAC address is going to be the MAC address of the client device we want to block. The destination MAC is going to be any, and the action is going to be deny. Now, we want to make sure that we leave the outgoing traffic set to permit because the IP firewall side is taking advantage of that. So we need to name this. We'll just call it MAC block. And this is going to actually create a MAC-based firewall object whenever we hit the Save User Profile button. Now we're going to add our rule. If you need to create a MAC source here, click the plus sign, and you can choose to either create an individual MAC address or a MAC OUI if you had a range of devices that all had matching MAC OUIs, or maybe a particular vendor as well. In this case, I already have a MAC OUI created for a MacBook Pro here, so we're going to use that. And again, the destination, we're just going to choose any. Doesn't matter where they're trying to go. We're not going to let them anywhere. And our action is going to be to deny. And now we'll hit save here. And again, notice that we've got the rule on the MAC firewall. When we click back over to IP-based firewall, everything is still in place here. And we're just going to click the save button. Notice that it saved successfully. So now we have our test SSID with open authentication and a single user profile with that MAC firewall policy in it. Now, if you're using multiple user profiles, then it would look something like this. We would create, regardless of whatever user profiles you already have here, we would want to create a new user profile. And we're going to call this user profile MAC block. And for VLAN, we're just going to define a VLAN here that doesn't exist in our network. So if you have a VLAN object already available, go ahead and select that. If you need to create a new one, you can click the new link here or the plus sign to create that VLAN object. My particular lab environment, I don't use VLAN 666. That is my black hole VLAN. So we're not worried about using a firewall policy here. The user ultimately is never going to get an IP address. We won't need any further enforcement. We're going to save that user profile. And now we have our default where we're still going to drop users and assume in this scenario that we've removed the MAC-based firewall policy that we just created from here. That's gone, so any users that fall into here are all going to gain access on VLAN 10 and be able to get the internet only. So now we have our user profile mapping those users to VLAN 666, and we are going to write an assignment rule. Now we're going to click the plus sign, so we've got our choice of attributes, and notice that client MAC address is one of those attributes. So same thing here. If you need to create a MAC object, you can hit the add button and create a MAC OUI or a MAC address. Again, I already have a MAC object for my MacBook Pro, so I'm going to select that and then save this assignment rule. And now, whenever any users authenticate to the network, if they don't match the MAC address or the MAC addresses that are defined here, they're going to be placed into this default user profile into VLAN 10 and have access to internet only. If they match the MAC addresses defined here, they're going to be reassigned to the MAC block user profile and be placed into VLAN 666, in which case they're not going to get an IP address. You could use this scenario in really any way under any circumstances that you wanted. Again, you're just mapping a MAC address to a user profile with a VLAN that doesn't exist. But again, if you have only a single user profile here that you're putting everyone into, you will have to take advantage of the MAC-based firewall policy inside of the user profile.